Hi there. Today I'm going to be talking about the superego as part of a series that I'm working on. But in order to do that, I have to lay down the groundwork first, and the only way I can think to do this is by using an analogy. This analogy is based on the myth of the hero's journey, which is a term coined by one of the 20th century's leading experts on world mythology, Joseph Campbell. The topic of this presentation is the hero's journey and the superego. Most of the material that I'll be referencing is based on the book The Hero with 1,000 Faces, written by Joseph Campbell. The concept of the hero's journey is presented in Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which was published in 1949. In the book, Campbell says that mythology is psychology, misread as biography, history, and cosmology. Campbell was heavily influenced by Carl Jung, who he mentions throughout his books and in his interviews. Joseph Campbell noticed, while studying numerous myths from all over the world, that there were overarching patterns that repeated themselves again and again. This led him to the conclusion that certain myths must be rooted in the collective unconscious because they were so ubiquitous. He called these types of myths monomyths to denote their universal existence. The hero's journey is an example of a monomyth, along with the myth of creation and destruction. Campbell believed that it couldn't just be a coincidence that myths from all over the world had such striking similarities. This is why he believed that myths arise from the unconscious mind. The images that arise from dreams correlate to the personal unconscious, whereas the images derived from mythology correlate to the collective unconscious. Campbell coined the term for something that he calls the superconscious. He describes the superconscious as a supernatural entity, something that we depart from during our lives and then return to through the ascension of awareness. It's part of the personal unconscious of individual people. The superconscious can only be accessed through repeated hero's journeys throughout an individual's life, and is not something that is easily reached because you must go through the underworld of the unconscious in order to achieve its cognitive benefits. In The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell uses the word macrocosm to describe the creation myth. He believed that the myth of creation and destruction is a macrocosm of our daily sleep-wake cycle. When a person wakes up, they're resuming in their ego, but when they fall asleep, they drift into their own unconscious, and it's through faith that the person believes he or she will wake up again. Okay, so this is an image that depicts the phases of our circadian rhythms. Notice that there are 12, and notice that it somewhat resembles a clock. This is another image that depicts the stages of the hero's journey. The most definitive part of the hero's journey is that it takes place in two worlds. The hero begins and ends his journey in the ordinary world, but he must pass through an unfamiliar special world. Campbell broke down the cosmic circle into 12 stages, which corresponds to the circadian rhythm cycle. In the book The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell refers to this as the cosmogenic cycle. Okay, so the hero as an emperor. There are several forms that the hero can manifest himself as. Sometimes the heroes of the ancient world were inventors who became rulers. In Chinese mythology, Shen Nung, for example, created medicinal remedies, invented the plow, and the system of barter and trade. These types of heroes become kings upon their return from the abyss. The hero who slays the old king to take his place can also become an anti-hero or tyrant. When this happens, the hero is considered a usurper of power, or someone who did not earn the right to be king. The hero as a tyrant leads to the birth of a new hero who must now defeat the evil tyrant as his hero's journey. For example, in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker had to defeat his evil father. Okay, so the warrior, the lover, and the saint. Heroes are also frequently depicted as being great warriors who, upon their return, gain the highest respect. The hero as a lover is a common motif. He must overcome certain obstacles in order to claim his prize, which is a woman. Sometimes the woman has an evil father who must be disposed of before he can make her his bride. The hero must rescue the woman and return to the normal world with her before he can marry her. Sometimes the hero is a world redeemer or saint. The hero as a saint values solitude, eating very little, controlling the speech, body, and mind through meditation, and cultivates freedom from passion as he is tranquil at heart and free from ego. This is another graphic of the hero's journey, but I like this one better because it's in the shape of a spiral instead of a circle to signify that there is an elevation of the hero upon his return to the ordinary world. He begins his journey on one level and ends his journey on a completely new level. The hero gains so much from the hero's journey that he actually evolves psychologically and socially. He becomes a higher valued member of his society and a better version of himself. Okay, so the start of the hero's journey. The hero receives some sort of message or omen that lets him know that he's being summoned to an adventure by a power greater than himself. This can take the form of a problem that must be solved. The hero most often refuses the call because he's resistant to change and he doesn't want to leave the comfort of the familiar ordinary world to enter into the unknown special world. In The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell says that the hero must be careful not to misinterpret symbols because symbols are only the vehicle for communication and should not be mistaken for the final term. Refusal of the call brings about supernatural aid in the form of a mentor. A mentor is usually older than the hero and is usually male, but the most important aspect is that the mentor has taken the journey already and can offer practical advice as a guide. Okay, so I used this video featuring Christopher Vogler as a source for this presentation. In the video, Vogler describes the hero's journey in his own words. He applies the stages of the hero's journey to the context of movies and story writing. I would recommend that you watch this video if you would like a more in-depth understanding of the hero's journey, and I'll be leaving a link to this video in the description below. The entire video is over 20 minutes long, so I won't be showing you any clips from it, but I want to highlight some quotes from Vogler. The mentor is wiser and more evolved than the hero. He has been through the hero cycle more than once. The mentor reassures the hero and gives the hero something to help him in his journey. It might be knowledge, a map, a sword, or a vehicle of some kind. The thematic message from the mentor to the hero is, it's scary over there, but it can be survived. I went there and I know. There can be stories with no mentor, and that is a horror story, which is an interesting variation of the hero's journey. The hero has nobody to ask about the rules of the new world, no one to look up to. It's a flexible system, and there can be variations. Okay, so the mentor and the ogre. In most stories that follow the format of the hero's journey, there's most often a mentor that offers assistance to the hero and leads him to the threshold of where the normal world ends and the special world begins. However, there's usually a creature that guards the entrance to the special world, and the hero must overcome this figure in order to gain access to it. In my personal opinion, I believe that the ogre or guardian represents the nemesis function, which a person must conquer in order to access their own unconscious mind. Campbell said that the ogre represents the shadow. An example of this kind of figure is Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the entrance to Hades in Greek mythology. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is an example of a story that follows the format of the hero's journey. In the movie, the hero is Dorothy. The call to adventure for Dorothy came in the form of a cruel neighbor who kidnapped her beloved dog Toto. The conflict between Dorothy and her neighbor became a significant problem for our hero. Dorothy risked her life in the midst of a tornado in order to retrieve her dog, and was pursued by her neighbor until she sought refuge in a house. The chaos of the tornado resulted in Dorothy being knocked unconscious as the house spun around in the air. When Dorothy finally woke up, she'd been transported to a special world and found out that she had inadvertently killed the guardian of this world when her house landed on the Wicked Witch of the East. As a reward for getting rid of the Wicked Witch of the East, Dorothy is granted the sought-after ruby slippers that the Wicked Witch of the East had been wearing when she died by the Good Witch of the North, Glenda. The Good Witch of the North arrived as a mentor to greet Dorothy and give her the slippers. However, after the Good Witch appeared, the death of the Wicked Witch of the East summoned her sister, the Wicked Witch of the West. The Wicked Witch of the West attempted to garner the ruby slippers for herself, but they had been given to Dorothy instead. This caused the Wicked Witch to become enraged and consumed with revenge. Okay, so tests, trials, and tribulations. After crossing into the special unknown world, the hero will have a series of tasks to complete, which prepare him for the great ordeal that will take place later on in the story. During this time, the hero slays monsters, solves riddles, escapes traps, and meets new friends who help him along the way. This stage of the hero's journey is important because he becomes fortified by his trials. He learns valuable lessons that will aid him later on, and he gains the confidence he needs to face his greatest enemy. This is the part of the story where character development takes place. The hero must be tested by enemies and problems in order to sharpen his or her skills. The hero may need to gain allies in order to defeat that which he fears the most. In the story of The Wizard of Oz, all the characters want something. The lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow each want something that they lack. Dorothy wants to return home, and the Wicked Witch wants the ruby slippers. Dorothy and her friends believe that the only way to get what they want is to seek out a place called the Emerald City. Allegorically, the color green is representative of money and fortune. They must follow a road made of gold, but this is the easy path. The wizard himself turned out to be a fraud and was unable to give the characters what they wanted. Okay, so more about the ordeal. The hero faces off against his worst enemy, or his worst fear, during the ordeal, which takes place halfway through the journey. He faces a situation in which he struggles to defeat his greatest enemy, which often takes the form of a monster, sorcerer, or tyrant. During this stage of the hero's journey, the hero experiences a death of some kind. The old identity of the hero falls away. He is no longer the same person that he was when he began his journey. He defeats the monster, overcomes his fear, and claims the prize or treasure that he will return to the normal world with. The hero obtains some special skill, magical power, or some other reward, and often faces tests of courage and redemption on his way back to the ordinary world. Here are more quotes taken from the video of Christopher Vogler that I mentioned earlier. The heart of the whole thing is the ordeal. Composed of two parts, one is death or a near-death experience or a confrontation with death, and a rebirth that comes out of that. There may be physical combat, a legal dispute, or a big argument in the family. There's blood on the floor and it looks like someone's going to die. In many cases, the hero actually dies and goes into an underworld, but they're not dead, they're living in the underworld. They get a second shot at life and are brought back, transformed. The ordeal that they went through was so intense that it shatters the old self, and now they get to be something different. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy enters the belly of the beast when she is captured and held captive in the lair of the Wicked Witch, which is her dark castle. She must wait for a period of time before her friends show up to rescue her. Dorothy, our hero, defeated the witch when she had the sudden idea to throw a pail of water on her, causing her to melt. Okay, so Joseph Campbell on the dynamics of consciousness. I read an article, which I've cited, that details Campbell's take on schizophrenia. In the article, the writer used quotations from Campbell where he compares the process of the hero's journey to having psychosis and schizophrenia. He believed that these were psychological manifestations of the unconscious as it tries to communicate with the ego. I've added a clip of Joseph Campbell during an interview with Bill Moyers where he explains how the characters in myths are often held for a period of time in an underworld of some kind before they're ready to complete their journey. He cites the story of Jonah and the whale. And so let's see if I can get this to play.
Jonah in the whale. I mean, that's a standard motif of going into the whale's belly and coming out again.
Why must the hero do that?
The whale represents the personification, you might say, of all that is in the unconscious. In reading these things psychologically, water is the unconscious. The creature in the water would be the dynamism of the unconscious, which is dangerous and powerful and has to be controlled by consciousness. The first stage in the hero adventure, when he starts off on adventure, is leaving the realm of light, which he controls and knows about, and moving toward the threshold. And it's at the threshold that the monster of the abyss comes to meet him. And then there are 2 or 3 results. One, the hero is cut to pieces and descends into the abyss in fragments to be resurrected, or he may kill the dragon power, as Siegfried does when he kills the dragon, but then he tastes the dragon blood. That's say he has to assimilate that power. And when Siegfried has killed the dragon and tasted the blood, he hears the song of nature. He has transcended his humanity, and associated himself with the powers of nature, which are the powers of our life, from which our mind removes us. You see, this thing up here, this consciousness thinks it's running the shop. It's a secondary organ. It's a secondary organ of a total human being, and it must not put itself in control. It must submit and serve the humanity of the body.
Joseph Campbell describes the unconscious as murky water, with a monster or dragon rising up from the bottom to confront the hero. I believe that this monster represents the demon function. Okay, so the road back. When the hero embarks on his journey home after defeating the greatest enemy, he has already shed his old identity and is now experimenting with his new identity. The ordeal has changed him permanently. Sometimes this period involves repentance of some kind. The road back to the ordinary world is still treacherous, even though he has conquered his greatest fear. The myth begins and ends in the ordinary world, but upon his return, the hero is ready to begin anew. The quest has changed the hero permanently. He has outgrown his old life. He now has an elevated social status due to his triumphs and is regarded as a keeper of wisdom. He begins a new life. He marries the girl he rescued. He becomes king. He takes his rightful place among his society because of the gifts and inventions he is able to now give to other people as a result of his journey. In The Wizard of Oz, the characters were awarded with gifts. Dorothy just wanted to go home, but she could not return to the ordinary world until she used the red slippers, which was the gift she received from her mentor. The first few times a person engages their superego, it's a chaotic experience. In my opinion, the tornado that swoops up Dorothy is supposed to represent the madness and psychosis that Campbell refers to when the hero commences his journey to the unconscious. This denotes that transitioning into the superego is not a pleasant experience, and it can be scary. Dorothy is knocked unconscious during the chaos, which is a clear indication that she is being transferred into her unconscious mind. People will often pray to the gods for assistance when their lives become unbearable. The superego can be demonic or angelic because of its supernatural nature. This is why a person's demon function can also be called an angel function. The superego serves to annihilate a person's former life because it is that life that is causing their misery. The ego cannot be erased completely, but it can be usurped by the superego. When the superego takes over, it's like hitting a reset button for your ego. Everything is burned to the ground so that new life can take place. Only birth can conquer death. The reason that entering into the superego is scary is because of the sheer amount of energy that can be found there. The superego is called upon during times of intense distress and probably evolved to aid in the fight or flight response. The unfortunate consequences of a superego transition are that most people will not understand what provoked it, and instead of trying to gain that understanding, they will likely flee out of cowardice. Essentially, it serves as a door slam to all the people you're close to in your life. Only the very loyal remain once the smoke is cleared and you are ready to begin anew. This is why accessing the superego is akin to hitting the reset button on your ego. Your old ego has died, and now your mind must begin constructing a newer, more fortified ego. All of your former ego investments fall by the wayside. Your oldest beliefs will be tested, and you'll be able to discern between your old false beliefs and what is actually true. Okay, so this is showing the 4 sides of the mind for INFPs. The superego for INFPs is the mechanic, the ISTP. Both are introverted judgers. If you compare the cycle of the hero's journey to the 4 sides of the mind dynamics, there's somewhat of a correlation between the two. And I know that this image is hard to see, but basically the upper half of the circle is the known world, and then below that is the unknown world, or the special world, the unconscious. One of the reasons why I'm making this series on the superego and putting it on YouTube is because without a mentor, the hero's journey, or the descent into the unconscious, can be horrific. I'm hoping that by laying out my experiences with my own superego, I can act as at least a pseudo-mentor for other people, especially other INFPs who may be experiencing chaotic cognitive transitions, or who come into contact directly with their superego, because I want to assure them that they're not alone and that they can get through this. So hopefully you found this to be interesting. If you have any thoughts, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. I appreciate you for watching this video, and have a great day.